Hey, welcome back. You watching Liquid Lunch on Biz TV. I'm John Tobacco. What do we want to do? Open. We want to be open for business across the country. Small business owners, they got shut out of the PPP. Their employees are getting unemployment more than they were making when they were working. So many people don't want to come back to work. Many people, like our earlier guest, Matt Conlon, said that most of his employees they polled said that they would rather stay home for the next 3 months or at least 6 months until they feel comfortable coming back. How to end it? There's one novel idea out there, and Dr. Robert Epstein can break it down for us as good as anyone. Dr. Epstein has this new plan that they're rolling out, nationaltestingday.com, nationaltestingday.org, and he's a senior research psychologist at the American Institute for Behavioral Research and Technology. I guess we'll get to him when Nico's.
Hi, Dr. Epstein. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
We're doing great. So tell us exactly what you're proposing here. It's very creative. It's something that I haven't heard many other people talk about or conceptualize, but at least if I understand it correctly, it seems that this could help us make great strides in not only beating back the virus, but reopening the economy. Tell us about what you have in mind.
Sure. First of all, let me just point out, I have been trying to get traction on this idea since March. So I published my first article on this in the Epoch Times back in March, and now I've published repeatedly over and over again, even a letter to the New York Times. I've been trying to get people's attention, and I've been specifically trying to get the president's attention, since he's the only one who can do this. But this plan, which I called National Testing Day, again, go to nationaltestingday.org, is just plain common sense. This is not complicated. This is the simplest plan out there. It positively works because it's been done on a small scale in other countries. Positively works, and it's the only plan. It's not a half measure like all the other things we're doing. It's the only plan that will allow us quickly, in a matter of weeks, not just to reopen the economy here and there, at great risk, but to open the entire economy with no risk. The schools, the churches, the stadiums, no risk. And we're not talking about 12 to 18 months or 2 years. We're talking about a timeline of weeks in which to do this.
So, Doc,
how does it work?
Yeah, let me ask you this. I had a viewer suggest to me going back about 2 months ago that the government should purchase 700 million tests and send every American 2. Test yourself now, see how you are. If you're positive, stay home. If you're not positive, test yourself in 2 weeks again.
That's it.
Do we have the capacity to produce 700 million tests, or 350 million for that matter?
Oh, easily, very, very easily, especially if the president invokes, his powers under the Defense Production Act. This could be done in a matter of weeks. And by the way, there's one element whoever called in, one element that was left out. There has to be secondary screening. So in other words, we're not only mailing all of these devices to everybody, and that's just done through the post office, by the way. The post office reaches 99.83% of the population. So we're not just mailing all of these devices, hundreds of millions, to everyone. We're also mailing them to the schools, the churches, the restaurants, the bars, so that they're at the entrances. And if you want to get in, you got to test negative. And it's a little thing. You just stick it in your mouth. It just looks at the saliva. It's very simple. And you want in, you test, then you test negative. If you test positive, they send you home. That's the safety net. That's what makes this thing work. If you go to nationaltestingday.com or .org, you'll be able to click on a little a thumbnail there, and this beautiful diagram, if I don't say so myself, this beautiful diagram will just open up, and you'll see how simple this is. And this is just common sense. I mean, yes, I'm a pretty smart guy. I have a PhD from Harvard. Yes, but this doesn't require a PhD from Harvard. This is plain, simple, common sense. You separate the carriers from the non-carriers. You don't put the old people into quarantine. You don't put the whole population into quarantine. That is completely idiotic. That's what we've done. You put the carriers into quarantine. The non-carriers are then free. They're free to go out and open up the schools and businesses without masks, without social distancing, and without risk.
Dr. Epstein, I love the idea of mentioning your academic credentials prior to your answer, and it's one I hope all of our other guests will adopt. Graduate school dropout of NYU, by the way. But Dr. Epstein,
Congratulations.
Dropout, period.
Dropout, exactly. I got my undergraduate degree. So, Dr. Epstein, you mentioned a couple of other countries where this has worked on a small scale. Give us a couple of examples, if you can.
Okay, there's some gorgeous, gorgeous examples of this. I'm actually working with one of my students now to write this up and get all the examples out there. In the town of Vo in Italy, and this made The Guardian. It was written up in The Guardian. It's not a secret. All the members of the town were tested because this is, by the way, the town where Italy had its first case. So everyone was tested, 3,000 people. The carriers were quarantined. That was around 90 people. The transmission stopped, right? That's it. You can't get anyone sick after that. That's it. And then after a few weeks, of course, the immune systems of the carriers killed the virus. So the virus disappeared in that town. Yes, three of them died because some people will die because they're very vulnerable. But the point is, this plan stops the transmission, kills the virus, and allows us to live our lives fully without risk and without fear. Now, that's one example. Everyone seems to be baffled by how South Korea managed to virtually eliminate this virus almost immediately. Well, it turns out they were using the same method. They were using it, wherever there was a flare-up, they would just swoop in with testing equipment. One building, one guy got sick. Okay, the next day, all 1,143 people who worked in that building, and this is in Seoul, South Korea, were tested. The ones who were positive, whether they had symptoms or not, the ones who were positive, they were quarantined, and that was it. There was never another case in that building. So there's so many examples like this. No one's done it on a national scale because most countries don't have the resources. We can do this on a national scale easily.
Doc, I went to St. John's, did get an associate's and a bachelor's degree. Not quite Harvard, but the Harvard of Staten Island.
Right.
One thing I've been tracking, I'm a numbers guy. I spent a lot of my career on Wall Street. The CDC puts out this chart with weekly COVID deaths, okay? And then there's a column on there that says percent of expected deaths. So this is a comparison of COVIDs for each week, and then what percentage of all expected deaths happened that week. And there's only four, from February 1st to May 15th, there are only 4 weeks where the total combined number was greater than 100. So it was 111, 122, 128, 113, right? So, and then it's 198, 97, 98, 97, 98. So I only see by the numbers, 1 month where there were more deaths than the government and the CDC expected. I don't know how to square that up.
Well, that's a little complicated.
Nowhere near 90,000.
Yeah. I know. I see what you're saying. But I've actually been tracking this very carefully, and the reason why the numbers are so large now is because of doubling, and most people just don't get doubling. I get it. In fact, I published an article in March called "The Doubling Problem" just to try to explain this. But on March 23rd, there were 100 deaths that day, and that was a record at the time. But meanwhile, the virus was still spreading mainly by lots of people who had no symptoms. So in other words, we didn't know what was happening. It's all happening secretly in a way. 2 days later, March 25th, there were 200 deaths. And the numbers just kept going up and up and up. The CDC said that we'd reach a peak on April 10th, and April 10th there were 1,800 deaths, and then the numbers were supposed to go down from there. Well, a few days later, we hit a day where there were almost 5,000 deaths in one day.
Right.
So the numbers, unfortunately, do add up, and right now, we're running between 1,000 and 2,000 per day, and it just varies day to day. But the point is, we will cross 100,000 deaths by the end of this month, and that is in 10 days from now. We'll cross 100,000. And
All right. Doc, I'm sorry, we're up against a hard break here. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Harvard educated, Dr. Robert Epstein from the American Institute of Behavioral Research and Technology. We got to have you back, Doc. Thank you so much. More Liquid Lunch for you to wrap it up right after this.